Yeah, that's the cat snoring.
Oh my god, that's the cutest thing.
So I think our perception of things matters more than the thing itself. I don't mind being a cliche.
Today's visit is in the workspace, living space of Rute Morais Peixoto. Morais. Yes. You are interesting mix of visual artist and architect in the same time. Or how do you see yourself?
Well, thanks for calling me interesting. I always feel like it's very natural for architects to also be connected, with the art world. And it kind of depends, I think, the school where you studied architecture. Because there are schools that are more artistically inclined and others that are more technical. And I come from an artistic. So yeah, I think for me it has always been a bit of a seamless thing to navigate between architecture and visual arts and music. Well, I also have some background in music because I studied at the music conservatory.
We will talk about your background for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I'm always really interested in people who have, it's kind of two professions in a way, or who switched from another field to art. Architecture is relatively close to art in comparison to others.
Yeah, I think it's an art form. For me it is. And I know this is a big debate, at least in the architecture community. And there's people who defend it differently. Because of course architecture is very connected to industry as well. But I think what explains it in very broad strokes as an art form to me is that you can have the same program, the same projects, guidelines, and then if you give it to 50 different people, you're going to have 50 different proposals, 50 different projects. And I don't think it's not objective, so that subjectivity contributes for it to be art in my perspective. And also I think it's something that derives a lot from ourselves and how we see the world and how we perceive space, and that's art.
You come from Portugal?
Yeah.
Originally. How long have you been living here?
6 years.
6 years in Helsinki.
Yeah, and I don't know any Finnish. I know, I'm sorry.
I wasn't going to ask you that, but sure.
I know, I just have, I feel bad, I just say it straight away, but yeah. maybe you can cut this part out.
There is time. Yeah. I once met an American, was he also architect? Could have been also an architect, who was here for 10 years and didn't know any Finnish, so you still have time.
That's good to know. You're never late to start learning. I mean, I actually did learn for maybe 9 months. And, I realized, okay, this requires a lot of studying and all of my free time has to be allocated into learning this language if I really want to learn it. And I was doing it until the day that I went to the supermarket and I decided, okay, now I'm ready for a basic internet. And then I go to the supermarket and I'm doing it. I'm like, okay, I can do this. And then there is the moment where they say the price of how much I have to pay.
Oh, and the numbers are, and then it takes like 2 minutes to transfer the numbers.
No, I just didn't understand the thing.
Oh.
Because, that there is the spoken Finnish.
It was in the spoken.
And the written Finnish. So, I mean, I didn't catch up with the spoken Finnish. And all of a sudden I was so frustrated because I thought, well, like, what have I been learning, Because I was pretty sure up to that point that I knew all the numbers in Finnish. But I didn't, obviously. So I just got so demotivated and, I kind of stopped learning it. And of course, a really great thing about Finland is that people speak English here. And I'm so grateful for that. And I think I've been, spoiled in that sense.
Probably, yes. I mean, if you are able to live 6 years without the need to learn the language, that is definitely spoiled.
Yeah, definitely.
Lately, I've been starting. Yeah, if we hear like funny noises, this is a bunny. Bunny noises. Because it's jumping around. It's like so cute. I hope it comes to us at some point. Yeah. Yes, there is a bunny and a cat here. Which is the first time I've seen this combination of pets. Honestly.
Well, it helped that the fact that they grew up together. And of course, the bunny was a year old already when the cat came into our household. But they have this sibling relationship, I would say, that, and you know, the bunny Judy, she's a senior now. So it means she doesn't have the same patience as she used to have when she was younger. So now she just wants to chill most of the time. And the cat still has with this attitude of like, oh, I want to play and I want to nag you. And she goes like, you know, poking her around. And then the bunny is just like, ugh, just leave me alone. So either that's what's going on with them or they just each to their own. And yeah. And sometimes they do have some cute moments where you see them, you know, kissing each other. Yeah, or like sleeping next to each other. Those happen too.
Does that affect your work somehow? Because you work at home?
Yes, it does.
Is it very distracting?
Yes. Completely distracting, especially our cat, she's very clingy. Judy's more independent, but May, she's very clingy. So when I sit down to work, she hates that for some reason. She doesn't hate it when I sit here to watch TV or, you know, when we're eating. But if I'm sitting down to work, then she knows, oh no, she's gonna go in the flow and she's not gonna care that I exist anymore. And then she's like all the time just, you know,
asking for attention.
Yeah, or meowing, or yeah, she can be really annoying sometimes, you know. But
now I can see how those reels with the cat chewing the laptop screen happen. Must be the same.
Yeah,
the same symptom.
Exactly. But it's, I don't know, I just love having them around and it makes my life so much better.
So we are now in your living room, but you do have also a dedicated workspace.
Yeah.
How did you decide to work at home? Many people choose to have a space somewhere else.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, I think during the pandemic, so because we moved here in 2019 and the pandemic started shortly after we moved, or I would say less than a year after we moved. So back then, like we were both working from home and I was working in...
Both is you and your partner?
Yeah, me and my partner, sorry, yeah. I should mention that.
It's okay.
And like our apartment was 1-bedroom apartment. And it started to feel really cramped because having all these living functions in one room was just becoming too much. You know, like the place where you work, the place where you sleep, the place where you spend your free time. I remember seeing this like meme online where this guy was sitting in a couch and then he had a laptop on his lap. And then he said, okay, now I'm in working mode. And then he just did this. And he said, okay, now I'm just relaxing. And it definitely felt like that. So when it was time for us to, you know, find a bigger place, we thought like, okay, it would be nice to have an office space or a studio space where we can just go there, work, and then we close the door and, you know, we compartmentalize the functions in our lives through space as well. So I guess that's where it came from. And my partner, he likes to be at home and he likes to, you know, be in his own corner. He gets very focused like working on his own, so I think he always appreciated having that place for himself, and yeah, I guess by extension, me as well. Even though I'm a very sociable person too, so I kind of need that balance in my life, like getting the stimulus from outside and being with people, and then coming home and then working on my stuff.
So you do kind of share the space.
Yeah, we do share the space, both me and him, but it's mostly me because I spend more time there now than him. He only works from home sometimes, not always, and he only needs like a laptop or computer and a desk, and I kind of need more space for artworks and such, but
How big is the workspace?
in terms of square meters, I don't know. I should know that, like being an architect and all. I would say it's maybe like, I don't know, 10, 12 square meters, pro.
But you don't have that much physical works, do you?
Well, I have some, but they're also not very big at the moment. I've been wanting actually to try out bigger formats, especially with these collages, these paper collages that I've been making, and paintings that I'm now also starting to try out more. Yeah, if I want to try bigger stuff, then where am I going to do it here? Do I have to rent a space, or do I move to the living room and then again I have all those functions blending in one space? So yeah, it's a first world problem. So
For sure, for sure. And what is it that you like most about the current space that you have?
the working space, I think the window. I think for me, natural light is very important, and also what I see from the window is important. And actually, it's nothing. I don't have like a mind-blowing landscape through there or anything. It's just we just see the courtyard from this residential area, and it's a garden, but it's pretty satisfactory for me, and I like to see the seasons change through that window. Actually, now that you're asking this, I'm realizing that. So when I moved to Finland, in the first year, everybody would tell me, "Oh my God, when you go through," because we came here in spring, and then everybody was telling me, like when you reach winter time, you're gonna want to go back to Portugal because this is horrible. And I'm like, come on, it can't be that bad. And the first year, I was like, okay, it's not that bad. There wasn't that much snow. But then I think when spring came, I realized I did go through the winter blues. And then the second year, it was really bad. I really felt very depressed during winter time, and then in spring, I felt so different. But then on the third or fourth year, I started coping with it better and accepting it better.
And probably vitamin D intake also.
Also that, for sure, very important. But I think it was through that window that I realized that there is actually beauty in seeing the seasons change so much here. And it also made me appreciate the sun much more.
Oof. Yeah.
And like when I go to Portugal, my parents have this, well, I'm from Porto, which is the north, and it means that in wintertime we also have a lot of forecast and rain. But still it's brighter than here.
No doubt.
Because here winter feels like someone turned off the lights, even when there's light, daylight.
That's a very nice way to put it, actually. Interesting. Haven't thought about it that way.
So even there, I feel, like there's more brightness. When there's a ray of sunshine, I just like to be in the window of the living room of my parents and just letting the sun come through. And my mom is like, what are you doing, you weirdo? I'm like, just let me be. You don't understand.
Maybe it's good also to tell the story of how you moved to Finland and like from Portugal. Why? And all that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's actually not that interesting. I'm sorry to disappoint. Well,
But you didn't move for studies or for a Finnish spouse.
No.
Which are the two main reasons.
that is true.
Usually, so.
That is true. I didn't. So me and Ricardo, my husband, so he's also from Portugal, and we both studied together in university, architecture. And although he's a graduated architect, but he never worked in architecture field. He works in video games, and he's a game artist. So we worked in Portugal for some years before moving here. Like I worked as an architect, and he worked in the gaming industry there. But we reached the point in our lives in which we just wanted more, because we felt like it was a life of surviving, and you don't make that good salary there, and you work a lot. I'm very grateful for that period of my life, because that's where my professional school comes from. But at some point you start kind of wanting more from life. I think when you're in the beginning of your 20s, it's different from when you're in your 30s, and you kind of start wanting different things. You want to be able maybe to, or at least we did. I'm not saying it's like that for everybody, but we wanted to be able to buy a house, and not having to worry like, am I gonna have enough money by the end of this month to pay my bills, and still even be able to save some. So we kind of started getting very tired of this grindy life, and we wanted better lives for ourselves. And also myself, like I think since I'm a teenager, I've always wanted to leave Portugal. It's just that I've never really felt that it was enough for me to stay there and to live there. And I just, like I said before, I need stimulus from outside. Like even living here in Finland, I need to travel, I need to see other places. I like to meet people, and I need to have perspective and different worldviews, and see realities that I don't know, because that's the thing that inspires me the most in life. So being in Portugal, like my entire life, and was not enough in that sense. And I always wanted to leave. And I was also this very depressed teenager, and very upset with the world.
Very classical example.
Oh my god, I was so angry all the time, and I don't know, like somehow that's very associated with being there.
Oh, interesting.
And yeah, I just really wanted to leave. And then I thought, I'm gonna leave when I go to university. And then my dad came to me and said, you're gonna have to study here in Porto, because I don't have enough money to send you away. So, and I was so like, oh my god, no, like when am I gonna be able to, go out and spread my wings? Yeah, so it only happened many years later. And yeah, I guess that's why we came here. So when we made the decision, okay, now it's the time when we're gonna go. We just made a list of countries that we were interested in, and Finland was one of them, because Finland has a good gaming industry, and
Alvar Aalto as well.
yeah, there is good architecture tradition here. So yeah, it seemed like a good place to come. And then my husband started looking for jobs. We thought it would be best if he was the one who, would find a job first, because it's more niche what he does. So he got a good job offer here, and then we came. And then the idea would be that we would come for a year to try it out, see if I would also find a job that I would like. And fortunately, I did very quickly. back then, and we stayed. And then the company where he worked for went bankrupt in a year.
Oof.
And he immediately found another job, which was really good. So that's where he is still. He works at Supercell. And yeah, he's been there ever since. So here we are.
You've had a smooth ride here,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is pretty nice.
Yes.
Well, that was also before Corona, when everything started going down in the world. Generally, I feel like, but maybe it's just a subjective feeling.
He actually changed jobs during COVID.
Uh-huh.
So the first year of his new job, or this job he has now, he was working from home all the time, 100% of the time.
How about you? I mean, not only your jobs in Finland, but also then you transferred to being an artist. But even before that, you said you studied architecture in Portugal, but you told me before you also studied music at the same time, and I had a bit of like, what?
Well, actually, I studied music before university. So I was 4 years at the music conservatory. I didn't finish it, so it was 8 years. And I started actually pretty late. I was 14 years old when I got there.
And you were singing, or you were playing some instrument?
I was playing guitar. Yeah, I know. I still keep in touch with my professor, my guitar professor. He was really an important figure in my life. He was like a mentor to me, and I really like him. And it's like we talk sometimes. I mean, actually, we haven't spoken in a while, but it's funny because he asked me like, "Do you still play?" And I'm like, "No." I don't play. I haven't played guitar in maybe 15 years or something. I think it was not my instrument, you know? I think it was necessary for me at that time to study it and go through it, but my relationship with music has always been a bit, how do you say, tempestuous? Or it's something that I've always loved doing, and I really need it, and I have a passion for it, but it's something that I can also go many like big periods of time without doing. I might go like a year without sitting at the piano and playing something, or without writing a song, or I might just go like 3 months in which I do it every day, you know. It's
So it's not only the guitar, it's composing, it's like playing the piano, it's what else?
yeah, I sing too, not very well, but I do. But I think like my passion lies more in writing songs than performing them. Yeah, that's why I'm not very interested. Like, I'm not focused in mastering an instrument and being great at it. And that's something I learned with the years. I just like the activity of writing a song. For me, that's just really cool. I don't know, it's like, I like the challenge. And it's so frustrating too. I think it's a bit like, I don't know, it's like I have this relationship with art in general, that it's something I feel like I have to do, but it's also so frustrating sometimes, you know? You're like, oh my gosh, it's turning like shit, or I'm not figuring out how to do this, and but somehow you kind of feel like you have to keep doing it. It's weird. I hear many artists saying like, "Oh, for me doing art, it's like how I feel happy, and it's just so cool to make art." I mean, I don't feel happy necessarily making art. I feel like it's painful. And they're like, "Oh, you're a masochist." I think I am a little bit, but it's more of a need, really, for me. than a state of happiness. Yeah. it helps me to cope with the world, and I don't know.
It's a therapy for you.
Maybe, yeah. And maybe that's why I also don't feel like I can do it all the time. I just have these periods in which I feel like I'm so blocked and I can't do anything. And then, I don't know, I have very high standards. And that I think that's a very bad thing when you're an artist. Because then you're always trying to fill in the gap between your expectations and where your skill level is. And frustration is there, in between.
I think all artists, if okay, maybe not all, but like the vast majority are very self-critical. Very.
Yeah, I think so too. But some deal better with that than others. I don't know. I think some people just keep going and keep doing. And others just, I don't know, don't do as much. They think more. I'm more of a thinker than a doer type of person. And I hate that. But, it's just who I am. So I have to live with that.
Maybe that's why you like to write songs and not perform them, because it's the same thing. You think more than you afterwards do.
That is true. Yeah. Thanks for that insightful on my person.
It just came to me.
Yeah, but that's true. And I think also, for example, for me, making art is a lot about, or most of the times it's about having ideas. And then that's why I don't feel like I can bind myself to a specific art form. Because usually I like to think about an idea and then I like to make the idea happen. So it's not so much about like, okay, I'm doing painting, that's all I'm going to do. And then I'm just going to keep thinking on, subjects for painting. No, it's more about thinking of a concept or an idea and then bringing that to life. And if I don't know the medium so well, I will learn it, or I will maybe ask someone who knows to collaborate with me, and then,
And this is another lucky thing that you live in the time period that you are, because contemporary art is completely accepting that worldview, and you don't have to really just do one thing, one medium. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah, for sure.
So how did you transition from architecture to art? Because you mentioned that your partner, you were really like wanting to have good life and not have to struggle financially. Art, I wouldn't say is the best direction to go if that's your goal.
That's true. Yeah, that is true. I think it's like a balance that we have to find between what we want and, how we want to live our lives. I mean, I'm fine. I'm trying to find that balance now too. And the thing is, I don't think it was like a full transition in the sense that, let's say I was a lawyer and then I decided to start doing art, I think it was more of a seamless thing. And like before I went into architecture school, I did high school in art field. So it was always there, that passion. And like architecture school, for me, we actually had courses that were the same as you have in fine art school for people who were doing sculpture and painting course. Like the drawing class was basically the same, I would say. So it was always there.
Then maybe the right question would be, why did you even go to architecture if art is a need for you?
Well, that's the $1 million question. Okay, so I went to architecture school because, and I know this is gonna sound a bit asshole and privileged, but I was a good student and I could get into any university I wanted with my grades. And at the time, I was faced with the decision of where am I gonna go to school, and where am I gonna go study. And I've always thought like I'm gonna follow music or I'm gonna study fine arts. For many years I had that, doubt. And music, I didn't feel like, so I was learning guitar in the conservatory, right? That was my instrument. And I didn't feel like, I don't want to be a guitar player. I want to be a performer. So I still hadn't found my my place within the music world then. I had a band, and that was pretty fun. But it's something we did as a hobby. It wasn't something we were doing, like we didn't want to take it professionally and do it full time. And so I wasn't sure, like, what do I want to do in music professionally? And also, if I wanted to go to music university, then I didn't have enough skills for that at the time.
But isn't the conservatory like a university?
It's not a university. It's more like it's the place you go when you want to be serious about music before you go to university. And yeah, it's like a school. It's like a second school.
High school. Or is it? I'm confused because in Bulgaria the conservatory is the equal level as a university.
Oh, okay. I mean, I think in Portugal it's not, even though you are like quite good at it. And I think most people who were at the university, they came from conservatories. But you don't get, like, the degree you get, it's not the equivalent to university there, for sure.
Okay,
And
anyway, yeah, it's a bit of an off-topic thing.
no worries. And even though, like, I didn't have the 8 years, and I wasn't a very good student at the conservatory, that's the truth. I wasn't, and I wasn't putting the time that I was supposed to in order to be okay. I was like, but I was not like, good. I was doing fine, but not good. So yeah, I would never get into university with my skill set at the time. And for some reason in that year, I developed this weird relation with painting. I was doing a lot of painting back then. And I don't know, I was like demotivated for some reason. And then I thought, well, if I'm not motivated enough to do painting, do I really want to go to university and study this? So at the time, I remember this person in my life. He was, okay. So I had I had a boyfriend then, and then his brother-in-law and his sister. I got along pretty well with them. And I remember having this conversation, like, what should I do now that I have to decide on the university? And then this guy, he said, why don't you try architecture? You have the grades, you could try it out. And I'm like, architecture? I've never seen myself as And then he said, yeah, because, it's within arts, and you like also the intellectual challenge, so you might actually enjoy it. And if you don't like it, you can try it out for a year or something, and then if you don't like it, you just switch to fine arts or whatever you want. And I was like, well, I gave it some thought, let's say 2 weeks, and I decided to try it out. So that's how I ended up to architecture. Yeah, and then I got accepted into Porto, a faculty of architecture of Porto, and I actually loved it. I really loved it, and I had no idea that architecture would be that. And good thing I did, because that's where I met my husband. And we've been together ever since.
And if you loved architecture so much, why did you go towards the art afterwards?
I think it's because I love architecture too much that I feel like I can't do it.
What?
Yeah, I know. It sounds weird. No, it's okay. So, yeah, I've worked as an architect for about 10 years now. Traditionally speaking, like doing building design and that type of work. And there's so many things that make me very frustrated with it that I started realizing a few years ago that I take more frustration and pain from doing it than I take joy. And I would say like the joyful part for me is perhaps 15% of the whole process. And for that reason, I feel like I can't do it now at this moment in my life. Like, building design or traditional way of doing architecture. So, yeah, it's just, there's a lot of corruption in the construction world. There's also, you need to be very diplomatic person, which I feel like I am, and I don't have problem being that, but there's just so many different agents in the discussion, and the time there's the client, there is the municipalities, there is the contractors, there's the engineers, there's different types of technicians. You have to deal with all of these different people, and for each of them you have to talk in a different way, and it just feels like it's you against the world most of the time. And I think architects, like the role of architects, shifted so much in the last years and last decades. And when I think like the school where I learned from, it's a bit frozen in time, because they teach you to be an author, and they like, you get this idea that people actually are going to listen to you and they're going to respect you as a professional, but that's not reality now. So like being an architect now, you basically are mostly put in a situation in which the money talks more than whatever you're going to propose the client to do. And I feel like we live in a world where people don't really care about good design anymore. They just care about building fast, and it's not so much about what's going to be the human experience of people who are going to be using that space. It's more about, okay, like, let's just do this copy pasted apartments, and like, we're just gonna keep repeating this formula because this is what we know, this sells and it's cheap, so like, why change it? And you don't really have power as an architect change that so much now, because if you try to fight back and if you try to bring new ideas, and they might start to feel annoyed and then they're just gonna ditch you and go to some other office. And I completely understand that. I just don't want to be a part of that anymore.
So you wanted to be able to to realize your vision in a more easy way. Is that it?
Yeah, I guess you can say it that.
I'm asking.
Yeah. I think you can put it in those terms. Also, there is this thing, like, when you start a project from the beginning to end, so much has to go, like, to happen. There's so much red tape, and there's so many things that are out of your control unless you build it yourself too, which of course, like, I don't know how to do, but like, there's also that moment, like, I used to work with these really passionate people in this office in Porto, and there was this one day in which one of them told me, our profession is so hard and frustrating, and people have no idea what goes on our side. But then when I see it built, like, all that hard work pays off, and I actually don't feel that anymore. Because now, if I go to something that I design and I see it built, I'm just probably going to be frustrated because it didn't turn out to be as I wanted. And, there's this, I don't know, I think I just lost patience. And I started feeling like life is too short to be so frustrated all the time. So
that definitely.
yeah. So I think that's why I say, I think I can't do it anymore at this point or at this moment of my life, at least. I don't know if I'm going to change my mind, I might, but in this moment of my life, I think I just love it too much. I prefer to not design any buildings instead of just doing bad design, I don't want to leave that contribute to the world. So if someone forces me to do something I don't believe in, I prefer not doing it at all.
And you find some satisfaction now in art?
Yeah, it's, the stakes are so much lower because if you fail, it's okay. What's going to happen? If you do like some shitty painting or, so what? You're not going to, nobody's going to care. And, if you do a bad design, it's going to stay there for a while and it's going to affect people's lives in architectural design, I mean. So I kind of like the, not having that heavy
responsibility.
Yeah.
Well, art is definitely a freer area in that sense than others, but in that for sure.
It's also harder for me to understand the rules on the other side. Or I mean, the other aspect of it is that, I feel like art now, what are the rules of the art world? I don't know. I don't know. So it's really hard. I find it hard to navigate at times because of that. But that also makes it interesting, I guess, that there's so much you can do and try, and there's really no consequences in the sense that,
And what does navigating the art world even means? It can be many things.
Sure, it can be. I guess it depends on what you want for yourself.
For sure. When I met you, the first time we met at this event, I think we had this... well, at least I felt this connection to this project that you have also, which is weirdly similar to what I'm doing here with the podcast, even though it's not, you don't have your own podcast. Maybe it's good to mention that project. Yeah, a point to start talking more about your art.
Yeah.
As itself.
Thank you for mentioning that.
Well, yeah. It's called Living Rooms.
Yeah.
And you please explain a bit more about it.
Yeah, so that's what I'm working on now most of the time. I mean, I'm working on other projects too, but that's the main one that I'm developing at the moment. And so it's a project about how we connect with spaces and how we perceive them, and how does that affect our identities and the way we see the world, the built world. So basically what I've been doing is I interview people like you.
Yes, there's the common ground.
Yeah. And I interview them about spaces they consider to have been meaningful in their lives.
And there's the common ground for you and architecture.
Yeah. And then I just ask them to describe these spaces and tell me about their experiences there, their emotions. And then I make portraits out of that, out of those interviews, without ever seeing the spaces.
Portraits of the spaces, not of the people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And then I write a song also for each of them. That's how I've been doing it. So I finished the first series, which had 10 people and 10 portraits and 10 songs. And I'm now developing the second phase, so the second series. And it's focused on displacement. So I'm interviewing refugees and asylum seekers. And I'm actually thinking of changing a little bit the realization of the idea. I mean, the concept is still the same, but I was doing these portraits like digitally. So they are digital paintings, and then each of them had a song. And now I'm more leaning towards doing them with actual manual painting and maybe more of an installation that is not video or media, and perhaps making just one soundscape for the whole installation. But it's still work in progress, so nothing is set in stone yet, and it's currently under development. So let's see how it's gonna turn out to be. But yeah, that's what I'm working on. And there's this ongoing series of paper collages that I have too. Those come from my travels mostly, and because I just like to visit places and roam around, and I really like to discover quirky, details in the urban landscape and then capture them somehow. And then there is this physicality of the process of collage. I use these flat colors, solid colors. Yeah, usually I just capture in my mind, or like I take a photo of something that I find interesting, and then I translate it into this paper collage. But it's not cutouts. It's not like you see a magazine and then you cut out already existing figures, for example, or textures. So I like to use these solid colors and like play with light and depth and three-dimensionality or bidimensionality, or and like somehow make the textures also from those solid colors when it's befitting. And I don't know, for me it's an exercise of deconstructing what I'm seeing and crystallizing this seemingly ordinary buildings. I like to call it like anonymous buildings, because I don't know anything about them most of the times. I don't know the authors, or it's about capturing the ordinary in the built world. In architecture school, everything was white all the time, and we didn't talk about color so much. I think we talked about accent colors, but in Porto school there is this tendency to just think of architecture as this white world, and I just started to become so frustrated with that with time, And then there was this office where I worked at. Yeah, that's the cat snoring.
Oh my god, that's the cutest thing.
And okay, so this office where I worked at, they kind of showed me different references of architecture than the ones I was used to from school and from other offices that I worked before that one. So, and at the beginning I was so resistant because they were really into postmodernism, and that's very seen as a like this bad, not so well respected style of architecture by many people who do it now. Who do contemporary architecture now. And I felt like actually that's probably the style that I like the most now.
What is that? What is postmodern in architecture?
So it's a bit seen as a kitsch style, and it's very criticized because it kind of takes elements of classical language. Like, for example, if you think of Roman architecture or Greek architecture, and then it brings them into an era where we live in now. Well, okay, postmodernism, it's not a style that is practiced now so much. It's not well regarded, And I actually think it has a lot of cool stuff that was done there. And yeah, I know if people hear this, it's not gonna sound good for other fellow architects, but I just don't care, I just think that...
Hey, you like what you like,
Yeah. I think maybe because you were asking about color, and I think because perhaps like my education was very colorless. Architecturally speaking, I think I started fighting against that very strongly. Because I think, the world is not sterile. Color exists everywhere, in everything. And it's just a natural part of life, it's a natural part of nature and everything that surrounds us. So just doing everything white, what does that even mean? That's also a choice of color. And white also has grades and shades, So I think whatever you choose to do with whatever medium, you always make a decision on color. Even you say like, oh, I'm not good with color. I mean, you are, because you're always making decisions when it comes to an art piece. Regardless if you think, if it's neutral palette or if it's white, like I said, or black, So it's always there, I think.
Well, then I don't know how this might sound, but like, does color even properly exist since it's just like how we perceive some wavelength of light, and that's what we call color? Is that just some setting in our brain? Is there objectively color?
Well, I think like now you're reminding me of this book that I read many years ago. It was a conversation between David Bohm. It was a conversation between him and Jiddu Krishnamurti. It's a book in which they have a conversation about perception and what is real and what is true or truthful.
Yeah.
And somewhere along those lines, there is that distinction between what you perceive to be real and what is actually true in the world, right? And I actually think that's very interesting. And that's what my project is about. That's like capturing the perception of people from a space. I think that's actually stronger than whatever exists in reality. So I think our perception of things matters more than the thing itself and how it exists in itself. Because especially if you think of space, so let's say a house. Let's make this example. So a house that you live in might cease to exist someday, or you might sell it, or you might move and never see it anymore. But your perception of the house is always going to be with you. So it will live with you as long as you live. Even though, in the physical world might not exist anymore. Mm-hmm. And I think this is very strong. It's very impactful, the impression we have of things and the perceptive experience we carry with us.
But then what happens if people's different perceptions kind of clash with each other? Because you're saying my perception of this is more important than the thing in itself, so this is it. But then there comes another person who says, oh, but you're wrong, and this thing is actually something else. What happens then?
Well, maybe that's the root cause for people not to get along. But it is, right? Because that's where, you have miscommunication, and maybe it stems from that, we believing that our reality is the ultimate truth. But I don't know, depending on the case, of course, if we're talking about politics, it's important to assess facts, and it's important to, understand where others are coming from and what their perceptions are. And I think this is actually an important exercise always. So I think you can still keep your own perception of things, but I think it's important to try and understand what others are perceiving as well. And I think
Then that's a question of awareness in that case.
Yeah, for sure.
From what we've read and heard about awareness, it's a process to manage to achieve it. Takes a while.
Yeah, for sure. But for example, in the matter of space, and I know I talk a lot about this, about space. But in the matter of space, let's say, if you talk with 5 different people on what their perception of a room is and what for them is most impactful there, and if you get 5 different answers, which you will get 5 different answers, isn't that also an interesting way to realize for an architect, let's say, how that he or she or they, how can they become a better designer if they know what people care about? Because when you're designing something, you kind of have your own idea of what's important and how a space should be like. And you always put that into your project, into your design, if given that freedom. But when you also understand what matters to others, I think that this awareness, it brings that awareness to, the act of designing, and I think it makes us better at designing, at least.
And there are UX people now rooting for you.
That's true. Yeah, I don't know. I think, like you said, this exercise of awareness, I think it just makes us meet others halfway, in the sense that it's important, I think, to understand where others are coming from. It just makes a more understanding world, I think, right? Like, to be aware of what you perceive and what others perceive, it just makes the world a more understanding place, I think. Overall.
So is it fair to say that this is the main theme of your art practice?
Maybe. At least it's a theme that I care about, I think. Like, creating this bridge, perhaps. I think creating this bridge is a bit arrogant to say, but exploring that bridge.
Creating a version of this bridge for yourself, because I'm sure the bridge has many forms. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. For sure, I think I'm always interested in that topic of perception and attachment and memory and emotion, and not just my understanding of it, but others' understanding of it. I think by trying to understand others, we also might understand ourselves better.
What other themes do you explore in your work?
I think, the ordinary is a current theme too. I think this is I've been thinking about that, and I'm like, that's such a cliche for artists, isn't it? Like, oh, my
Could
art.
be.
Yeah, my art is about capturing the uniqueness in the ordinary, or the extraordinary in the ordinary. I think ultimately everybody's art is about that. Even if you think about, for example, Claude Monet, his paintings are about the most ordinary things, but they're beautiful, and they're so emotional, and there's an entire world unfolding in each of them, and that's okay. I don't mind being a cliche. So I think it's a lot about that, and I think memory and attachment kind of is always there, and human relations too. I think I tend to gravitate towards that more. And also, I think there's a social factor that is there in living rooms at least. And I've been finding out more and more that I also like that component. Maybe it's related to connecting to people emotionally. For me, that's important. You know, human connection. It's important.
So you'd like to have a project which is kind of, I don't know if I can say co-creation, but at least like collaboration with others?
Yeah, I like that too. It makes me feel good to work with other people. And you know, it doesn't always go well. But it sometimes, or yeah, most of times it goes well, and then you get a lot from it. And I like to discuss ideas with people. I like getting feedback, you know, like real feedback. I like having back and forth of ideas with fellow creatives and other people.
How do you do that when you work at home? Because there's no other studios around you.
It's a bit hard, I have to say, and sometimes it does feel a bit lonely. Well, I speak with Ricardo a lot, my husband, and we have that relationship. We've always had it since university, that we just criticize each other's work and we help each other out as well. So it's very raw and honest, you know, and I really appreciate that. Yeah, I think it's mostly with him, but I think what I'm doing now has reached the point in which he says a lot. He says this to me a lot. I just don't know how to, you know, respond to that, because that's not my field so much. So I feel like we've been like separating each other a little bit in that sense creatively. But we still discuss ideas with each other. And yeah, sometimes I might ask for feedback to some friends who are also artists, or... But yeah, definitely, I've been actually thinking that it would be cool to organize something like these informal sessions in which artists can just come and show their work to each other and have it open for discussion.
Yeah, there are people who do that in their own little groups of other trusted people who would be willing to give feedback and take feedback as well.
You kind of have to put yourself out there. I think, for example, exhibiting work is a way of doing that, but of course, if you're exhibiting, it means you already completed something.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have that while you're in process of making something.
So you are flexible to other opinions while you're still doing the work.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it makes it better. And even if sometimes, like for example, Ricardo says this to me a lot. He's like, "Why are you showing me this if you're just saying no to everything that I'm saying?" And I'm like, "Well, but that's important too, because
it's good to know what you don't like."
Yeah, and I think sometimes you might be unsure of something that you're doing, and then if the other person goes like, "Yeah, but change this or change that or this not," and you're like, no, but I like it this way. You also realize that, okay, but this is actually the way I want to go. So that's equally important as, you know, the opposite, changing everything.
So how do you sustain your practice now as an artist?
Well, now I have a grant. I have this working grant from Taike, which is pretty cool, because it allows me to focus, well, on doing artwork full time. And it's not a project grant, so it means basically I get a monthly salary for which is not, you know, it's not insane amount of money, but it's okay. And especially if you live with someone else, I think it's pretty okay. And yeah, that's how I've been living at the moment, and for the last 3 years. So I got a Taike grant for 1 year. And then I got it for 3 more years, and now this is my last 3rd year of the second grant.
Now anxiety is still kicking in, or?
I've always been anxious because I'm a very risk averse person. And for me, like, it's hard to, I know it doesn't cope well with being an artist, because being an artist means instability and financial instability, right? Very likely. So, yeah, I think it's always been in the back of my mind that, this is temporary, and when it's over, well, like, what's going to happen? So, yeah, it's always been there. Surprisingly, I think it has been there more in the beginning of the grants than now.
You're now trusting that it's gonna be okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like, I've been surviving my whole life before. And of course, like, here in Finland, my life has been more comfortable, fortunately. But I just feel like whatever comes my way, I'll just deal with it somehow and make it work.
Yeah.
It has to be.
Of course.
Otherwise,
the universe is gonna work its ways to support you. No, totally. It's not like I'm not saying that ironically.
Yeah, I know. Like, maybe I'll just sell an artwork for $1 million. I'm joking. I mean, maybe one day, who knows?
If you do that, I would like to talk to you how you did it. Yes, for sure.
No, but I think, things will work out somehow. Yeah, but for now, it has been with working grants, and I've been really lucky. And, like, I get also commissioned sometimes. And I was also teaching at university before in part-time, so that also was bringing some extra
in
income.
Finland or in Portugal?
In Finland. I did it in Portugal too for a summer before. Actually, that's how I discovered that I really love teaching. I was still a student in architecture school.
You're teaching architecture?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was still a student, and then they had these summer courses, and I was teaching one of them, and it was really fun. I did it here too at the Aalto University. I was teaching design studio. Yeah, that was the term. I was like, there's a word missing here. Yeah, design studio. And that was really fulfilling. I really love doing it. I feel like it's a very enriching experience. You learn a lot from doing it if you're open to it. And it's just so... I love seeing the students grow, when they begin the course and where they end. Like, for me, that's a very satisfying thing to see.
What is the course about? Design studio sounds a bit broad, like... Or is it a software?
No.
I honestly don't know.
Sorry. It's architectural design. So basically it's where they make projects, architectural projects, like building design, usually. And that is the best part of being an architect, is, the exercise of designing something and coming up with the idea. And materializing it somehow, even if it's on paper. I think that's the cool part of being, or the coolest part of being an architect. Yeah.
Now that you work as an artist for your project or another project or something, do you have you created a specific routine of how the process goes for you, or does it just depend on the day?
It kind of depends a bit on the day. I think I have a routine, and then within that routine there is variation, if it makes sense. So usually I'm not the most productive person creatively in the morning. I'm more like, my mind is more creative, I would say, mid-afternoon and evenings. In the morning, usually I try to do tasks that are more straightforward, like, for example, emails or exercising. I like to start my mornings with exercise. And then, like, in the afternoon, that's where I usually start working, and then it might go all the way until the night. And it takes me a long time to get in the flow because I'm very easily distracted.
And the bunny jumping around doesn't help.
No,
For sure.
it doesn't. And I also, yeah, like I explained to you, for me, like, doing art is not necessarily something that brings me happiness, and joy. I don't believe in happiness. That's
Strong words. Strong words.
no, I believe in being content, and I believe happiness is something you experience occasionally, but it's fleeting. It's not something that you're permanently in a state of, in my worldview at least. So yeah, and it takes me a while to get in the flow.
Are you one of those people who, when you get in the flow, you forget about the world around and forget to eat, forget to sit down?
Well,
Or not so much?
Not so much. I like to eat too much for that. I feel like it's a constant struggle because I don't know how to explain this, but I think it's maybe from my upbringing that, like, my mom, for example, she's always very caring about, when is the time to eat. We eat. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You might be having like the most heartfelt conversation of your life with someone. She's gonna come and be like, "We're supposed to go eat now," and I think that's also like embedded in me. So no, I am able to stop and go do those basic human functions. But yeah, like, sometimes I just get focused and I don't see. I have a bit of a problem with time. I've always had since a kid. I feel like I exist in a time and then the world exists in another one. And usually my perception of time is much slower than the real passage of time, in society and that's why I'm usually tardy. I think I improved a lot moving here to Finland because people get really offended if you get late for things. Not in Portugal, that's pretty normal in Portugal, but here people get so offended, so I made a very conscious effort to be on time. But I don't know, it's just my idea of an hour. It's just, for me, it goes by so quickly, and I think I'm always running after time. It's weird. When I was a kid, my first day of school, primary school, I was late for it. And in my mind, it's always like 10 minutes. Oh my God, I can do so much in 10 minutes. Usually, no, I can't.
10 minutes are a blink of an eye sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, in my mind, there's always time, even though there isn't. So sometimes I feel like I'm stopped in time, which is not necessarily a good thing when you have to be a functioning individual in society. So
it also depends on how the world is around you. I mean, if it's not like everything too fast-paced, it can be more chill. I feel like here in Helsinki things are pretty chill.
Yeah, that's
apart
true.
from the fact that people like to be punctual, but otherwise I feel like time is going a bit slower here.
It's true, yeah. Helsinki is pretty chill. Too chill sometimes. And yeah, it's also good to have, the opposite at times in our life, or I feel that at least to have the contrast and to not always live in the same rhythm. Yeah, I don't think I'm a routine person in that sense. Or okay, I do need like some level of routine, but then I need variation within that routine. But surprisingly, I think I do well with deadlines. Yeah, I'm a bit that type of person that when I know that the deadline is approaching, like I work a lot, you know? And then outside that, I might work like in a bit more chilled or relaxed way. So I don't have like this consistency of like how I approach work when it's for myself. If of course if I'm working for a company or something, then I'm more consistent in that sense. But if it's just for myself, yeah, I think there's a bit of these peaks. And I feel like I do well with deadlines precisely because for me time goes by slower. So I'm always like, yeah, I still have time. I can still do this. And sometimes, like, I don't know, people come to me and they're like, but how are you going to finish that in this amount of time? I'll do it. I know I can do it. And usually I keep calm until the very, I don't know, last hour or so. Then I start panicking a little bit, but always controlled panic.
Controlled panic.
Yeah.
That's a good line. You go to exhibitions here.
Yeah, I do.
Where would you usually go?
I don't think I have a place. It's more like I follow Instagram. I actually don't like social media much. I use it more for work stuff, just to check open calls or to check events. So like I might see there, okay, there's this gallery is holding this exhibition, or like some friend might tell me about it or invite me and then I go. So it's a bit like that. I think it comes from my network more than specific places that I usually go to. I think there's museums that I tend to go more often. Like I really love Atheneum Museum, for example. That's my favorite. I like old art more than contemporary art. Usually. Even though I don't do that, but you know. So yeah, I think I go there as a place. I go there more often than other places, and yeah, it kind of varies a lot, the places. And I think there's many small galleries here. There are events happening.
There are, for sure.
Yeah.
Do you prefer to go to an opening or afterwards to the exhibition to check it out?
Well, going to the opening, like it's what you do to network, right? So, yeah, I think I try to go to those, like also for work purposes. But yeah, I think both. I like doing both. Depends on the exhibition, maybe, and the artworks that are being presented. I do enjoy a lot, like going to a museum and just being there at my own pace without having to worry. You see, again.
With your perception of time, not with the museum's perception of time.
Exactly. And of course, if you go to an opening, you're not so focused, I think, in checking the art. You're more focused in mingling and talking with people. Yeah, so I do enjoy doing both things for different reasons, I would say. Yeah, but the act of going to a museum and just, you know, like having the freedom to be there and just watch whatever art piece that might capture my attention. I really love doing that. Yeah, I do it in my own rhythm, and that I'm sure, because if I go with friends or if I go with Ricardo, my husband, he's always like, okay, so let's agree from the get-go. I'm gonna go at my own pace and you go at yours, okay? Because I can't keep up with you because you're too slow. I'm like, sure, don't worry. And then he might finish, I don't know, like half an hour or something before me, depending on the exhibition, of course, and what it is. But I like to read all the descriptions and what's it about, the piece, you know. So, yeah. And some pieces I just like to be there and look at them. I was recently in Japan visiting this museum in Teshima. So there's these art islands in the Seto archipelago, and one of them is Teshima, and it has one of the pieces of architecture / art that I've wanted to visit the most in my life. And it's basically a building. I mean, it's called a museum, but it's basically this building. I would even, is it a building or is it a giant sculpture? Well, food for thought. But anyway, it's this built installation that it was designed by Ryo Nishizawa, this architect that I love. He's half of Sana, this Japanese studio, and it has an installation. It was made with this artist called Rei Naito, and it's so simple yet so striking. And I was there for, I would say, an hour just in that space, and for me it was like one of the best experiences of my life. So yeah, it really depends. Like, first time I saw Monet's water lilies, and he has, I don't know, hundreds of them, but the first time I saw them, I don't know, I probably was standing in front of them for a really long time, just crying. Like, it was so emotional.
Wow.
Yeah, it was so emotional. I mean, now I see them and I see other paintings from the water lilies, and it's not the same as that first encounter, you know? I still find them fascinating, and I will look at them for a long time, but not as the first encounter I had with them. Well, on the other hand, if the artwork doesn't really speak to me, then I will probably just look at it for seconds.
Makes sense, of course. So what would be some other artists that have touched you so much? Or maybe not that much, but in a more special way.
Yeah, well, there's just so many. But you mean like artists that I've seen their work live, or is it okay if I say also like artists that I've just seen like documentation of?
No, artists that you just like their work.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be, face to face.
So, well, I really like, for example, well, Monet, I've mentioned. Impressionism is this period that I really am fascinated with. And I think it was a turning point in art history, where it's like artists just started losing themselves and allowing themselves to be free with the brush strokes and how they were depicting the world. And, well, again, like how perception is important to me, and so it's about that, right? It's about capturing what you perceive more than anything else. And I think it's really amazing that, like, when you see his paintings by close, they almost look abstract. And then when you see them from far, everything is in its right place. I find this fascinating.
Wasn't this kind of liberation of painting very much connected to the invention of photography, though?
I think so, yeah.
Because then they didn't have to be super precise and realistic after that.
Yeah, it's true. There was a lot of discussion, like what would be the role of... I mean, from what I've read, I wasn't there, so I don't know.
It would be remarkable if you would have been
traveling in time. I think it might be similar to what's happening now with AI. That artists are also feeling their work threatened by AI. So I'm guessing it, like, the mindset and the attitude back then probably was a bit similar, especially with more commercial art forms, that people probably thought, well, now that there's photography, like my work is not as needed anymore.
And they were right. It wasn't. Who is now ordering portraits of their spouse to put on the wall? Not that many people.
Yeah, it's true. There was a shift for sure, as I think there's a shift happening now as well. But yeah, it's interesting to see how technological changes and advances affect also art.
Oh, very much so. I mean, it's really connected. And I think it's always been. I mean, if you think about the Renaissance, how it got further in art, also because the artists had new technologies to explore there, doing camera obscura and dissecting bodies and such.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and I wonder, like, before photography, what it was like to be an artist. I think it was more about technique. It wasn't it, like the traditional academic artist, where you had to be very skilled technically. I think now we are living in the total opposite era, in which people might not even know how to draw or sketch. And it's all about concept. I mean, I don't know. I think I'm nobody to judge how people do their art. But sometimes I feel like we also live in a bit of an era of anything goes. And I don't think academy, it was so strict and stiff, and anything you would do out of there, that was also not well regarded. Like, for example, Goya was a painter, like, really ahead of its time. I think nobody was doing that type of painting. And I think he's amazing for that, and also like how expressive he is. But so neither that and perhaps neither what we have now. Maybe like a balance of
I think naturally things balance themselves, because now with the AI, it's also gonna bring back a bit more the craft in the art, because it gets more valuable what you do physically, because digitally you already can just snap your fingers and create a universe almost.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's coming back.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even me myself, like I think most of the stuff I did was like with digital painting, and now I'm not doing it anymore because I feel like it doesn't have any value because of AI, so I'm also like detaching myself from that. And yeah.
But we were talking about artists that have somehow inspired you or influenced you in any way.
Yes, we were, exactly. Okay, so another one I would say was Hayao Miyazaki. That's also a very cliche artist to like. Like, his world building is really inspiring, and also he's just so good at drawing. It's fascinating.
Ironically, now that we just mentioned AI, and then there was the Ghibli AI imitation thing and the whole controversy around that just recently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but I think from what I've seen with AI, there's something there that somehow you kind of see that it's AI, especially when it's realistic. I think maybe if it's more stylized, like Studio Ghibli type of language, it's not as easy to understand. But if it's this realistic, there's usually some kind of weird glow.
They're just too smooth, the photography.
Yeah.
Generations. But artistic style, if you want to do an image that is just some more not so realistic, it's indistinguishable pretty much.
That's true. That is true. It's a bit scary, isn't it?
Yeah. Although, I mean, I had my period of being freaked out about it. Now I'm just past that.
But it's interesting, like of all the things they could have used AI to be developed for, that's what they did, really, like. Yeah. Anyway, going back to the artists. Well, another one, for example, that comes to mind is Dohosu. He's the sculpture that works with ethereal shapes, and it's also a lot about registering space, and how he sees memory and space together. For example, do architects count?
I mean, just in your case, probably. I'm usually collecting visual artist names, but I actually think it's more enriching also to mention people from other spheres. That's
Okay.
And for you personally, if architects have made an impact, by all means.
Yeah, for sure they have. I mean, it's hard not to. And continuously they do, actually. Well, there's, for example, Memphis and Sotsas, or, well, Ryo Nishizawa, as I've mentioned already. There's Caesar, that's always going to be a reference. He's like the father of Porto School of Architecture. So I think undoubtedly I will always be influenced by it, by his work. And he's actually very good at sketching as well. There's the postmodernists that I've mentioned, and also modernist architects that I really, really like. There's Alvarado, obviously. That's pretty obvious one. More recently, I've found this Angela Penn. She's an artist that worked a lot in I think animation, and she does really amazing like urban landscapes. Or Richard Claremont. He's another painter that I like to follow. He works with oils. I think he's a painter from Australia, if I'm not mistaken. There's Kento Ida. He's this artist. I think he's a digital artist. And I'm gonna risk saying that his art is very inspired by this ukiyo-e and this renaissance of ukiyo-e style, which is, oh my god, I wrote it down so I don't forget. Shinhanga. Yeah. It's these Japanese styles that I also feel like very inspired by. So, yeah.
It sounds like you have a connection to Japan.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's been there. I mean, I like pop culture also a lot. Like
general pop culture or Japanese pop culture?
General pop culture, but yeah, I think I have like a soft spot for Japanese pop culture too. Not everything, but I think, not the weird kinky stuff. But yeah, I think there's really good stuff there in manga and anime, and not just that, but yeah, Japan has like a lot of fascinating aspects for me.
Thank you so much for this conversation. It was really insightful in some ways.
Okay, and happy to hear that, and thank you so much.
Good luck with your
listening.
Project. Are you going to exhibit it somewhere, by the way? Soon?
I hope so. I mean, last year it was exhibited in 2 places here in Helsinki. The first phase, and now the second phase. Yeah, I hope to exhibit it as well. But let's see. First, I have to wrap it up.